Hi, everybody. It's Steve Tarter, another edition of Tarter Sauce, and here at the Journal Star in Peoria, Illinois. And with me today, Jared Bartman, indie musician. How's that?
Yeah, that works for me.
All right. And Jared, you and I got to know you a number of years ago. You were working at the Peoria Symphony Orchestra in a capacity of librarian and I think personnel and you're doing all kinds of things with the director. So what have you been doing since? Because that's been a few years.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, my day job, I work as a photographer with my wife in our business under her name, Stephanie Bartman Photography. But then I have this whole other side of things. I do as a musician. I'm a songwriter and band leader kind of guy.
You told me you're 29.
Yep.
How long have you been doing music?
Oh, I mean, I've been playing in bands since probably age 15, 14, something like that.
So you've wanted this.
Yeah.
That was a path that you saw. Hey, I'm working this side of the street.
Yeah, and I take it really seriously. I don't know if it'll actually be something I do for my full living, but it'd be cool if it could be part of a living or something. And I spend
Part of a living. That sounds like an album title.
Yeah, there you go. That's another one.
We're big on albums and group titles because we're going to tell everybody you used to go by your name, Jared Bartman, but now you got a group name, Moon Ruin.
Correct. Yep.
From whence did that come? You were saying you were a fan of.
Well, I was thinking about changing that my band name for a number of years, just because I kind of wanted something to. I have like a different crew of people playing with me all the time, and it's my songwriting and it's me kind of as the focal point, but I kind of wanted something as like a kind of a group vibe, a group mentality, and I've been thinking of different names and just discarding them left and right, and then kind of.
What's some of the ones you threw away?
Oh, I don't know. I had a whole list of them that I was going through, and I was sending them to friends and just
we don't like that one.
Just to make you grimace. They were so bad. But then I hit upon this one, Moon Ruin, and to me it kind of has these connotations of this book I really like by Ray Bradbury, The Martian Chronicles. It's a sci-fi thing about colonizing Mars. It's just a cool book, and so kind of has these pleasant connotations for me. And then, of course, you have to go and figure out if anyone has the name or it's used in any way, and wasn't, and so it felt right. And this record that I'm putting out is it's still the same music project, but it's very different musically, stylistically from the last stuff, so it kind of felt right to start fresh under this new name.
We played a little bit of your music at the intro. How would you describe, because somebody who had to say, I go online and I can look you up and find out sample. You've got samples, I'm sure. Across the internet. But how do you're sitting next to somebody at a place and somebody says, oh, so you do music. So what kind of music do you do? I mean, what would you answer to that?
I always have a really hard time with it. I usually tell people just to listen to it, but
and leave me alone.
Yeah, well, because it's hard to kind of pin it down, and but I mean, we were definitely referencing particular things during making the record, and we were referencing bands like Radiohead. I don't know if you know the artist Sade from the 80s.
Yep.
We were referencing a lot of that.
Sade. I haven't heard Sade in a while.
Yeah. Just a lot of different types of electronic music. We were referencing the band Bon Iver. It's a Wisconsin-based group. I don't know. We were referencing Michael Jackson, even though it doesn't really sound like Michael Jackson. There was like some groove-based stuff. It's like very dancey. It's very electronic-based. There's a lot of synthesizers.
When you were, kind of deciding on joining a band or being a musician, so what were you listening to then? What was sort of your influences as a teenager?
Yeah, my favorite band of all time has always been the Beatles. So I
never heard of them.
Yeah.
They must be. Yeah. They must be new.
Yeah, they're not that popular. I mean, they're just this niche thing.
I just saw in the, my wife gets all these I don't know that she gets them. I think they're sent to us because if you ever make the mistake of ordering out of one of them, that you get everything.
Yeah.
So one of these catalogs arrives, and I'm sitting there with the morning with nothing to do apparently, and I'm leafing through it, and there's this among these odd. This is one of those odd gift catalogs. Was a book that explains every Beatles record, every song.
Cool.
I don't know if that's true or not.
Yeah.
All I saw was the cover of it, but I thought, wow, the Beatles are just they've covered this. It just goes on and on because they just haven't stopped since Ed Sullivan, and before that probably. But no, it's amazing. But given that kind of recognition, the songwriting and the I don't know, the influence that they had. What about now? Who do you look at now as a group that's out there, as an individual that's out there that moves you?
Yeah. There are a lot of indie bands. There are a lot of, the term is indie. I don't even quite know what that means anymore because they're still like pretty, big labels. So I'd say some bands would be, Radiohead is sort of like almost like a modern day Beatles in like the scope of their.
And they've been around a while now.
They've been around for a while.
Yeah.
So I mean, they're not a new band. I really like this band called Always. They're from Canada. Singer-songwriter Angel Olsen, St. Vincent, Sharon Van Etten, Bon Iver. He's been around. Justin Vernon, the guy from that group, he's been around for a while. But his project, Sufjan Stevens, he's another indie guy. Those would be
you got a lot of different things going on. What when you sat down to do this album now, is it done?
It's done, yeah. So
the album is done.
And we spent like 3 years making it.
Whoa, 3 years.
Yeah, it's just because at the time I was working at the Postal Service, U.S. Postal Service. I did that for a few years, and I was kind of trying to juggle doing that. And
so what were you? This is interesting because I'm thinking, because I did a turn at the post office too back in the 70s for about 89 days, because beyond that you become union. And I was never in the union there. They came along later, but I was doing something else. But what were you doing in the post office?
I was sorting mail. I had
looking at a screen?
Nope. I was just so we have this. They would have this system where you have like big crates or just like containers of parcels and letters, and mostly parcels, and then you scan it under this machine, and a robot voice tells you where to throw it, and there's a big room in front of you of these hampers, and you throw it into the right hamper, and you do that.
I see a song coming out of that one.
And it was very monotonous. I listened to a lot of audiobooks.
Sure.
I was
how do you hear the robotic voice? If you're hearing,
you can kind of listen.
Turn
for
it down a little bit. Yeah,
I got used to it, but so I would do that. I actually did the 3 a.m. shift at the North University Post Office.
Even better for contemplation.
Yeah, and I did some other shifts there too, and I worked as a window clerk. But then, for the most part, I was doing this early morning shift, and I chose later on. I think at first I didn't really have a choice about doing that shift, but later on I could kind of bid different jobs, and I chose that one because I was having my friends Mike and Liam, who made my record with me, Mike Noyce and Liam O'Brien, and they were kind of at this point in their life where they could come down for large quantities of time and stay at my house, and we set up a studio.
Down from Wisconsin?
Wisconsin, yeah.
I saw that online.
Yeah, Eau Claire, Wisconsin, and Milwaukee is where Liam is from. And so they would come stay with me. We set up a studio space in my basement, and then so I would work my 3 a.m. shift, and then I would kind of take a nap. They'd get started for the day, and then I'd kind of nap on the couch and then join in, and we'd do stuff, mix and record. And we did some stuff in Wisconsin too. Mike actually does music for a living, and he's played in a bunch of indie bands like that band Bon Iver I was mentioning, and then this band Tallest Man on Earth, another band called Arrow Flynn. And so he had a lot of like music friends he brought into the process. So we did some stuff in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, where he works or where he lives, and then he brought a bunch of friends to play on the record. We did some mixing down here, so I was kind of like jumping between using vacation time and like paid, other like unpaid leave to go up there, and then they would come down here. So we did this over the course of a few years, kind of a long-winded version of what we did. Yeah.
Well, that's that would be a good way, I would think, of developing, all the stories that are probably go into that album, the songs, the tunes, and everything else. What do we need to know about how to get this album?
Well, I'm doing a Kickstarter campaign right now, just because I covered most of the expenses for the record, like the studio fees, engineer fees, performer fees, all that myself, and I just have a publicity campaign I'm trying to do in order to get the record out, get it heard to the maximum amount of people.
Because that's increasingly important, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is.
Because if you don't do that, it's kind of lost in the shuffle.
Yeah, it's really just like tying it to a rock and just dropping it into the ocean, kind of. So
you've probably tried that, right?
Yeah,
it didn't work.
It didn't work. It didn't work. So yeah, I'm trying to do this. So this is kind of like this last. We spent so much time and effort and money to like do this thing and do it right, and took a lot of time, and we just want to kind of put it out in a way that that complements all the work that went into it.
You have an intriguing little video for the Kickstarter program.
Yeah.
You when we were setting this date up here for the podcast, you told me about it, and I went there and I saw it, and the part I really like. I mean, the whole thing is good, but it getting very engaging because you have a series of false starts, which there's Jared looking. Oh, hi, and then in a cut, and then. He stumbles over something else. You pick up something, you drop it. And I think that's very effective way to say, hey, we can make fun of ourselves a little bit,
right?
And we want to engage the public. I think it's good.
Thank you.
And I think that's the kind of thing that I think it's almost subconscious that if I like that, then hey, I might like your music. You got me hooked on at least thinking, hey, I need to give this guy a shot here.
Yeah. Well, it's hard to come up because, Kickstarter on their guides are always saying, like, make a compelling video. And, we got a babysitter for our two boys. So then my wife and I used one of our cameras for our photography business and kind of set it up and just like, okay. So I made a kind of a script that at first I was reading off of, and it was just really lame. And then I just started kind of going off the script. Yeah. And then just doing stuff. And then like, okay, well, we have all this footage. I'll see what I can do with it. And then eventually kind of got to that. Yeah. But yeah, it's fun.
Well, no, I think that's the way to go. And I just thought of another name for a music group, Off the Script.
There you go.
I'm sure that's taken.
There you go.
We were talking about that earlier about names you remember and names that either represent what you think the group's about and then isn't. So all kinds of fun with that. So what happens next? You got the campaign kind of getting it ready.
Yeah.
Hopefully getting the money you need to get the publicity going.
Mm-hmm.
Then what? You hit the road? Are you planning on playing?
We are going to
a bunch of places.
Yeah, we're going to tour in April. The record comes out in April. So then one part of the thing with the campaign is hopefully we meet the goal, but we're kind of using it as a pre-order for the vinyl record.
So people can get a record out of this.
Yeah, they can get a record. There's a bunch of other rewards that I've created, like T-shirts, enamel pins. They're like different services. Like we'll do a photo session.
Oh, sure.
I'll write a song for you, record a song for you, or you can have recording time with me in my studio space. What else? Koozies, just like different, a lyric book kind of thing, just a variety of different things. So you're actually it's a donation, but you're getting something in return for it. So it's sort of, we're setting it up as like a donation thing, but also you can buy the record, pre-order the record through it, and then hopefully it gets funded. And either way, I'll be touring in April. The record comes out on April 6th, and I said it's coming out on vinyl. There's a small label in Indiana called Dilated Time Records, and they're putting it out on vinyl, which is cool. That definitely
Well, it's
helped
great
a
to
lot.
see the vinyl return. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not what I don't want to misspeak and say like it's gone back to what it was, but it's
Sure.
rising.
Totally.
And people are much more interested in it. And when you think about it, it's like there's so many older records still in circulation.
Right. Yeah.
Why waste them? I
Exactly.
mean, so.
Yeah, a lot of people like vinyl, and even there's like a resurgence of cassette tapes coming back. I'm not as into that, but who knows?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I will be. But I'm not even releasing the record on CD currently. It's just going to be vinyl and download, just because currently,
It's the big waste.
no one's really doing much with CDs, and it'll be people can stream it on Spotify and all that stuff.
Now the music business has changed, obviously since you mentioned the Beatles, since the 70s, 80s, whatever decade you want to pick, before the CD kind of came in and pushed the album or the LP
Yeah.
aside, and then of course we've since had the internet kind of move into the mainstream.
Right.
So it's hard to I mean, as I understand it, and I don't particularly, I'm not following it, but it's more difficult, isn't it, to kind of get noticed, just to have people understand what you're doing.
Yeah, and it's like in some ways it's amazing because recording gear compared to even like 10 years ago or something, has gotten way more affordable, and there's so many ways to put your music out, get it out. But then, so there's like this crazy democratization, and people, if you've got like, good studio skills, like, what you're doing in the studio, you can get like a few like set pieces of gear and you can make like really good stuff with not a ton of money. So that's like the playing field is like super even, but then there's like kind of just this like noise bed of everyone, putting their thing, and tons of people, like a lot of people making great music, and it's all kind of like coming at you. So it's hard to cut through that like noise bed.
And the one thing, and I'm speaking for my generation, I guess, or my age, because as I remember growing up and listening to music, the radio was the chief driver of what you heard on the radio is what you went. I mean,
Right.
and obviously the radio split between AM and FM and developed, country, and it became all kinds of specific areas. But, if you go back to top 40, you had Carpenters alongside Jimi Hendrix,
Right.
and
Yeah.
Beatles alongside, Bee Gees or whatever group you want to pick.
Right.
Yeah, we don't have that anymore. I mean,
Not
we
really,
have
no.
it, but it's all over the place.
Yeah, everything's so fragmented. There can really be, even just, if I think that there's a band I really like, and I'm like, sure, like, the average person I talk to, like, surely is going to know this particular band, and then I get these blank stares when, like, this particular band might be like selling out shows all over the place and like just have this huge following to me, but then like that just kind of illustrates, I guess, a little bit how fragmented it is. There can just be all these people doing their thing and no one really knows about.
I mean, a perfect example of that, and again, this is someone who's in their 60s. I'll be listening to Pandora, and of course they go by that logarithm or whatever algorithm.
Yeah.
I never did learn the math on that, but that if you like this, you'll like that.
Right.
So here comes a group that I never heard of. That it's a good song. Yeah, I hit the button on whatever. They've been around for 20 years.
Right.
Or recording. The first time I've ever heard their music.
Right.
And that's on me. But at the same time, that's the society in which we live.
There's just so many groups too. Yeah. And it's harder too, like it's harder too for artists to break through because like there used to be so much more money in the music industry. Like it used to just be this insane, like people would buy records, people would, I guess back in the day or in the 60s or something, or 70s, people would do tours to promote the record because that would be the seller.
Right.
And now it's more like big name bands do tours because that's how they are actually making money and like licensing and stuff. But then since there's so much less money in it, like I've definitely found too, just pitching it around to labels and even talking to some label people, labels are less willing to like develop an artist. So it's more about like if the artist is developed on their own to the point where they might not even need or they're like wondering, oh, do I even need a label now? That's when the labels are going to come and say like, oh, we'll be your label.
Yeah.
Like, you know,
Once
so-
you've basically done all the spade work.
Exactly.
Yeah, it has changed, and it puts so much more on the musician or on the people that want to bring something out. What would you say? You know, and you don't have to be overly modest here, but what do you think sets your Moon Ruin apart from, say, something else? I mean, is it just frivolity, the cleverness of the lyrics, or how do you analyze it?
Yeah, well, I think the songwriting, I mean, I'm really pleased with the songs on the record, and I think, you know, there are a lot of good songwriters, and I guess, like, I love a lot of particular songwriters because no one looks at the world particularly in the way that they do. So I guess maybe I feel like I have that I've got a particular perspective that maybe people would enjoy. So there's just that. And then I feel like we really, like sonically, the record is really interesting and robust and just, and like we spent so long on it and I think it's like really well engineered.
And you're not, you know, you're pretty young, but you've been on tour before. You've done tours and regional tours. And,
I mean, yeah, I've toured a lot. They've all been like pretty low level tours, but yeah, certainly I've done plenty of tours around the U.S. and hopefully, like every one of them, they've started from being pretty dismal and then like slowly working up to being better and better. And then like the last one I did.
Let's talk about those dismal ones.
Yeah, sure.
I'm thinking of the Blues Brothers movie where they played in front of a cage.
Oh yeah, Stand By Your Man.
People are throwing things at them, but maybe that hasn't happened to you yet. But
no.
Do you have any songs on this new album about working at the post office at 3 a.m. in the morning with a robotic voice in the background? 'Cause I think you've got something there that you know, whether it's sci-fi or just unique, because, you know, and I have to digress here, but the time I was at the post office, which was in Peoria in the 70s, and I was with the ragtag part-timers that they plugged into as they needed. So I worked Sundays and odds and ends, but there were times when you'd be in front of your cubicle stuffing envelopes or whatever, and the music of the day was whatever the top 40 station was. So I must have heard Captain and Tennille probably about 700 times.
Right.
If that doesn't make you go postal, I don't know what does.
Right.
You know, and now we haven't heard that term in a while. Shouldn't bring that up in these dangerous times of ours. But anyway, that was what I remember. But no, the monotony of a job.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to pick on the post office because I'm sure automation and robotics are taking hold there too.
Yeah,
but
it's almost taking hold a little too much, though. It's kind of getting rid of some jobs.
Well,
like
exactly. Exactly. But I mean, you have that ability to think a little bit about, you know, whatever it is that you're doing, and you know, I think that's. I know they said Philip Jose Farmer, who's another great science fiction writer who lived in Peoria, worked at Keystone for a while, and he said he had a night shift, and I remember him saying this, or I read this somewhere, that he liked it because he could think of his stories while he was on the job, and then he would go home, and I don't know if he went home and immediately wrote them, but later would write them down, and of course he turned into, you know, that was his career. And maybe same thing coming for you.
Yeah.
You did this little thing and work it up, and then now the music will follow.
I would definitely think about songs like, you know, problems in arrangements, you know, when the work is so like mundane that you know there's not a lot. I mean, it's you're picking up stuff, you're moving it, so it's just kind of like grunt work kind of stuff. And so there was that. I would think about songs, think about arrangements, and then I would also, you know, listen to books, listen to music, and I feel like a lot of my lyrical ideas or just kind of ideas about writing come from listening to
what is
reading
kind of
books. As
a musician, what's kind of your habit? Do you, I mean, for me it's listening to old AM radio, which you know, it would probably scare a lot of people. But how about you? I mean, you mentioned audiobooks, internet stuff. I mean, where is the music coming from that you hear? Albums, vinyl?
Oh, just like when I'm finding
Yeah.
music.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll buy records. I've got a pretty good vinyl collection. I like to go to record stores and like to, check out used record stores and like thrift stores and stuff. But,
Right.
a lot of it is checking out on music blogs, recommendations from friends, and just kind of keeping up. Even just that Spotify, that streaming service, they'll have like different playlists of like new music music always comes out on Friday, so there'll be like a new music Friday. So just kind of various things like that, checking up on social media and seeing.
I should get a plug in here for somebody we got coming up on a podcast, Mark Alghini, who's a WCT, and they have, I think, a new music day or new music Tuesday, or I'll have him tell me what day it is. But it's nice to see that the new stuff is, because I mean, I never would have thought that the music that I heard in college, in that period and shortly after, would still be being played on major radio stations. God knows, 50 years later.
Right.
It's almost scary because it's like, well, surely we've evolved. Now, if that was a classic period, and I assume it was, great. But we've heard a lot of that,
Right.
And
Yeah.
it'll always be good, but we need to hear the new stuff too.
I get tired of radio stations, particularly at the post office. There'd be a radio station, and the playlist was literally the same, rotation of songs every day. And, don't get me wrong, I love, the particular songs, some of them, that they play. But then when you hear it every day, it's like, there's a lot of music in the world. We can switch it up.
And, another thing I notice is advertising's use of music.
Yeah.
If you watch TV, depending on what channel or show, it's pretty intriguing. Or I'm sure there's a science to it, so they would tell us. The one that I think it's involving a smartphone, and I can't even tell you the name. It's terrible, but a girl and a guy, the romance thing, and they're sending little messages back and forth, and the music there I thought was a new song.
Okay.
That accompanies this, because she's gratified at the end to know that her boyfriend does indeed share her own I won't say lust, but I mean,
Yeah.
they're together. Okay, it's a tear-breaking thing.
All right.
But anyway, the song is apparently, my son told me this, an old Peggy Lee song.
Oh, that's cool.
From whenever. And I thought, what? I thought it was brand new. Well, A, I hadn't heard it, and B, the way it's used in a very modern setting.
Yeah.
You wouldn't know. So there's all kinds of. You need to find an advertising and get that Moon Ruin tune on the latest Volkswagen.
Yeah, I do have someone who's who's doing licensing pitches.
Oh, yeah.
And hopefully
That's
that'd be cool.
that's an avenue. I mean, it really is. I mean, it sounds crazy because you think 30 seconds, how can that work? But the repetition of that, I mean, I know there's been countless songs that groups or whatever that have come that route. So anyway.
Yeah, I would not be adverse to that. There are some things that maybe you wouldn't want to advertise.
Exxon Mobil, maybe.
Yeah, probably not that. I mean, just things that wouldn't like ethically be in my zone. But in general, like I feel like a lot of musicians are kind of, if it's not something that like ethically bothers them, they're just like, well, I need to make some money, and that'd be helpful to actually make money in music. Yeah.
How do you look at the Peoria music scene? Is there a music scene here?
There is. It just, I don't know. It could use. There definitely is a music scene. We could just use some more venues, particularly just some small capacity, like a 100 capacity venue that has an in-house PA system. Someone who's actually there to run the PA system, and they sell drinks and for sure, and then maybe food too. Like we need some more spaces like that, and like, you know, particularly ones that are well maintained, because they're places in town that maybe do have a PA, but there's no one there to run it, and the PA system has never been updated in the past 15 years, and it's like, you know, sort of broken. There, you know, there could be more of a.
Have you seen places where these clubs are?
Yeah.
I mean, not necessarily big cities, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Austin, Texas, and places like that, of course.
Sure.
But I mean, have you seen those when you've made the rounds?
Yeah, definitely. And it's just like the problem with shows in Peoria, it's always kind of like build your own venue kind of. So if you do a show in a lot of places, and maybe I'm totally wrong, there's more places like this. And I know a few that, you know, do have a system, and maybe they're like catered to like a particular kind of music, but just like more in general, like a space that's open to local shows, but also like, you know, that's going to attract some touring bands that are they're making the rounds, because a lot of times Peoria kind of gets ignored. Like, you know, there's places like Limelight, that's cool that's here. It's really big,
Right.
So like if a local band is going to do something here, you're probably not going to do it there because it's so huge.
It's a little overwhelming.
Yeah. So just something like smaller with a good PA, like, you know, good list of beers, and, you know, they're like serious about booking, serious about having a sound person behind the board like every night. And, you know, I see that in like Champaign-Urbana. There's a variety. I know they've had a hard time with venues too. Like they've lost a few venues in like the past year or so too. But I feel like that would be a thing that would help. And it's hard knowing like if this is the market that it would serve that. But, you know, I definitely notice this is a bit bigger of a venue, but like the Castle Theater in Bloomington, like they're getting tons of touring bands, and it's a bigger venue. But if there was something like that, or a bit smaller here, you know, I think people would come out. Yeah.
Well, and I think it would help the downtown if that's where it would be.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily have to be, but it seems to me that it would be. There've been music spots down there before.
Yeah.
And maybe there could be again.
It's just too hard as a band to, you know, book a venue, provide your own PA system. You know, you can figure out the ticketing. You can do that yourself. That's fine. But it's just sort of like you're pulling in all these components yourself. Like if the place does shows, they have a talent buyer, they've got a PA, they do shows every night. So there's just kind of like
There's a system.
There's a system set up, exactly. So when you're just trying to set up a system every time, it's hard.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Very good.
it's hard.
Well, Jared, hey, we wish you well.
Thank you.
The new album is Moon Ruin, out in April.
Yeah.
Check it out online because you got the Kickstarter campaign going.
Yep, it's going until December 1st, and the record's called Slow Down Ego.
Slow Down Ego.
Yeah.
Is your ego slowed down now?
I think so.
Sufficiently? Okay.
Yeah. So the deal with that is that I let my wife sing the title track.
There you go.
So she sings the title track, Slow Down Ego. So that wasn't the full reason, but that's, in a way, it's like a bit of a slowdown for my ego.
There you go. Very good.
Yeah.
And I should mention again, you know, because the video is there for your Kickstarter campaign. You'll enjoy the opening of that with this guy, sort of introducing you to his own campaign. And good luck with that.
Thank you very much, Steve.
Well, hey, man, it's been Jared Bartman, and we'll hear from you in the future. This is Steve Tarter. I want to thank Matt Dayhoff for getting this thing out on the public venue, and we'll see you next time.